So I think adaptability is really important for us. Early on with the AI transition, one thing we saw a lot was senior engineers applying for us and would give them challenges to do as part of the hiring process. And they'd look at it and go, oh, this is easy. And then they'd start solving it. And 5 or 10 minutes later, they'd be halfway through solving. Whereas when the intermediate engineers were applying with us, they'd look at this and go, okay, well, I know some of that, but I'm not going to solve it that way. I'm going to ask AI because that knows all the things I don't.
Welcome to Tech Teams Today. This week we're joined by Robert Egglestone, SVP of Software Engineering at Trilogy. Robert, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Matt. It's great to be here on Tech Teams Today. This is my first podcast, so I'm looking forward to it.
Me too. And congrats. You've been leading software teams for more than 2 decades. I'm curious how your career shifted from being an IC programming to shifting to a leadership role.
And that was quite a while ago now. The first time, though, was I was at the University of Auckland. And at the time, a lot of our delivery had been ERP based. So anytime you need something that's a bit different or we need a new process, people were extending the PeopleSoft systems. But we soon ran into challenges around the maintenance and the improvement and the finding the right skills around that. So we made the transition first in the development team into bespoke development. At the time, using Grails as a platform, which was quite interesting. So the team started producing all these apps, but we quickly found out that after we produce the apps, someone has to run them. And unfortunately, we hadn't really had the discussion with the ops team until we started giving them these apps to run. And that was a bit of a challenge. So the way, my transition came about is one of the leaders I worked with at the time observed this challenge and decided we need to do something about it. So he put together a group of people and said, okay, you guys are going to start running these bespoke apps. And Robert, by the way, here's an opportunity for you to start getting this team up to speed. So that was really great. I enjoyed it. And I got to apply some of the knowledge I'd put together in figuring out how to build these apps onto the operational side.
And so you were still pretty hands-on, technically speaking, but as you made that shift, right?
Oh, definitely. I think as it was my first leadership role, I was still doing a lot of things. And the people around me within the team, I would coach and guide and support them, but there was more of a side effect of me doing things rather than an intentional direction. I hadn't understood at that time that, hey, Robert, your job is making these people as good as they can be, not your job is doing these tasks and solving these technical problems.
Yeah, yourself, right? You have to eventually start delegating, right? Looking back at that time period, what do you think are some key lessons that you learned and maybe something you've had to completely rethink?
So one thing I learned is that technical depth is important. It's very easy to be shallow or to make assumptions. But if you do that, it's very easy to also go in the wrong direction. And if you're wanting to steer people in the right direction, you need to make sure the decisions and the guidance and the support you're providing is all grounded in fact. The area I think I've had to rethink is one I've seen come up a few places. And I quite like it from a lesson from the Phoenix project, which is, and in that you see there's a security architect called John, and his mission is to improve security. And his instrument to do that is to, identify the blockers and get people to solve them. But quite late in the story, what he finds is that when it comes down to it, there's a lot more than just him solving blockers to deliver the right outcome. So they have a big audit, the executives come on board, and they start applying a wide range of solutions to the problem. Some of these we can manage through financial controls. Some of these we can manage through HR processes. And I think the lesson for me is that it's not all about applying technology to the solution. You have to understand that we exist in a much more diverse and broader organization. And sometimes the right solution is not technology, it's one of these other areas. So you have to partner with the right people and work with them to apply the right solution to the right problem.
Yeah, it's multidisciplinary. You have to look at it from a holistic standpoint. And if you just try and solve everything with technology, it's probably not going to have the optimal end result, right?
Oh, totally. It's very easy to go down a rabbit hole and spend months building a really complex system and then find out, actually, we could have done this in a financial way or by renegotiating our contract or something else that was much easier. So, yeah, it's very easy to end up in your silo.
Over engineering. So shifting over to leadership and hiring, when you're building a team, what are sort of the traits you look for in a candidate beyond just technical chops, especially now with AI and all these LLMs?
Definitely. So I think adaptability is really important for us. Early on with the AI transition, one thing we saw a lot was we'd have senior engineers applying for us and would give them challenges to do as part of the hiring process. And they'd look at it and go, oh, this is easy. And then they'd start solving it. And 5 or 10 minutes later, they'd be halfway through solving it. Whereas when the intermediate engineers were applying with us, they'd look at this and go, okay, well, I know some of that, but I'm not going to solve it that way. I'm going to ask AI because that knows all the things I don't. And they'd get an answer very quickly. And so we were actually seeing for a while there intermediate devs outperforming senior devs in the interviews, which was really surprising. And I think a big part of that is around adaptability and ego. You know, if you've always done things a certain way and you believe you know the right way of doing it, it can be a lot harder to transition into a new way of working. With AI, we're seeing everyone's having to relearn how to do development, and it's breaking down some of their assumptions around the best ways of doing that and changing things a lot. And it's only people that are willing to be open to that and to change the way they're doing things and embrace the new models that they're going to be most successful here.
Yeah, and ego can definitely be like the biggest enemy of your progress as an engineer today, right? I feel like humility is a big part of the last couple of years and a big part of the change that a lot of engineers have had to go through, which is, I don't know everything. Or at least I don't know everything about this anymore, right? I have to learn all these other things and I have to use all these other tools or at least try them. And what you did 10 years ago or 5 years ago is not what's going to work for you today, right?
Oh, totally. It's a huge awakening for a lot of people, suddenly having to go back and struggle with the basics again. You know, you're starting to talk to the AI tools and they're not giving you a solution straight away. You have to come up with the right prompting strategies, build up your context, get your insights and your support and your tooling around your way of working. And many people haven't had to do that for a long time. So, you know, putting yourself back to step one is scary for a lot of people, but those that have made that shift early are the ones that are succeeding now.
And how do you spot future leaders in the hiring or promotion process? What's something you look for?
I think through the work people are doing, you see it early on. You know, the people that are more enthusiastic and adaptable and able to overcome things. In our company, we hire globally. And so when we want to hire for a role, we'll hire for that same role in half a dozen cities and take the best people that come through. As a result, we've almost always got teams that are in a wide mix of time zones. And as a result, people usually have to do quite a lot of work independently or have, you know, half a day or more when they're not overlapping with others. We see people that will work through a problem and they'll get stuck. And then they'll go, okay, well, I need to escalate to my manager, or I need to wait until I can get direction, or I need to wait until someone can respond to my comments. And, you know, those are the people that can't grow or get better. On the other hand, we see people that hit a problem and they'll go, okay, I'll raise a question on the channel. Okay, I'll see if I can get access to the form. Okay, I'll ping 3 other people who aren't my manager but are online and might be able to get me access to what I need. And the people that they hit a blocker, but they're not afraid to try as many different ways of overcoming it as they can, are the ones that move forward because they're spending more time learning, more time growing, and they're able to achieve a lot more quickly. So I think that perseverance and resilience and adaptability are key traits for what we want to see in people and what we want to see in the leaders.
Yeah, that's a big one is like, as an engineer, you hit a wall and it's so tempting, especially back in the day when you didn't have AI to go to just raise your hand and be like, hey, this guy's smarter than me. Here's a problem I'm dealing with. Can you help me out with it? And eventually you kind of have to train yourself over time to be like, no, let me figure this out. I'm not going to ask for help unless I've exhausted all options and tried everything. But then there's also a delicate balance, right? You don't want to spend days working on, a minor blocker.
Yeah, I mean, asking for help's an important part, but it needs to be considered as one of many parts.
Right, yeah. I remember my first CTO, basically, I was early on as an engineer, as an IC, I was asking for help too much. And he was like, hey, rule of thumb, don't come to me until you've exhausted all options. And it was like, obviously I didn't take that very kindly when he first said it to me, but it was the best advice I ever got in my early career as a developer. Was just, you'll get more respect and credibility on the team. You'll learn more through the troubleshooting process. You'll be more resourceful, adaptable. You won't get as intimidated by challenges, and you just grow as a result of that, whether as a developer or as a leader.
Yeah, it's
I'm
really
curious.
it's
No,
really
no, continue.
important to try your best to push through things, but I think it takes a long time before people start to understand what are the right questions to take to a leader and what are the ones that aren't. There are some
Yeah.
things where it's clearly that person's responsibility around budget or people or whatever that might be earmarked as, but sometimes understanding what those boundaries are and what those expectations are can take a lot of engagement and experience, and often it's not written down. You just need to work with someone enough that you can understand where they're comfortable with other people managing it and where it's something they need to manage themselves for one reason or another.
I'm curious, shifting gears a little bit on your take in the hiring process of hiring specialists versus hiring generalists, especially today in today's sort of LLM craze.
Okay. So I mean, at the moment, and for quite a few years now, we've almost exclusively focused on hiring generalist engineers. I think our perspectives on how good an idea of that have shifted over the years. There was a time where we would hire the best developers we could, and because our business model is to acquire companies, they would jump into whatever company we had acquired or product we were working on at the time. But we soon found out that if you don't have enough experience and overlap in the right technologies, it puts someone at such a disadvantage that although they might be able to get there eventually, it's going to be months before they're able to be competitive and even longer before they're able to be a top performer. So I think we pushed the generalists too hard early on, but it's sort of coming back to that point now where if you've got 2, 3, 4 languages under your belt, with AI, you can basically do anything. And as long as you understand the fundamentals and enough of the differences between how they operate, you can keep things on task. You can do really well in that environment and keep things moving forward. But I do think you need that 2 or 3 languages first. We do see people that come in and they've only worked in one environment and they try and apply that experience more broadly. And it becomes really challenging when they start having common issues or there are different idiosyncrasies in the way things operate that are not easy to pick up or adapt to.
Yeah, if you've been building in the same environment, in the same language, in the same framework for a long time, that can be a huge shift to, hey, here's a totally different framework, a totally different environment. Now you're working on multiple products, maybe. That's a huge shift.
Yeah.
So sticking with hiring and teams a little bit more, how do you think about building a balanced team, right? You don't want to have everyone on your team be the same, right? You want some people with a little bit different personality, a little bit different approach, thought process, experience levels. How do you make sure that you sort of have that right balance?
So I think the one that's most pertinent for us is around experience levels. Certainly we want someone that's a bit more experienced that can help the juniors grow. In times where we've had teams with mostly juniors, it's been a real struggle for them both to solve the occasional hard problem that comes up, but more importantly, to grow. And we really need our juniors to grow quickly for them to, become effective, be delivering at the level we need. I think personalities are less of a focus for us, mostly because as a fully remote company, in Crossover and Trilogy, we've been remote for a long time and the company was designed that way from the ground up. So a lot of our interaction is document centric. And we do it that way because that aligns well with async work, that aligns well with teams distributed around the world in different time zones. It turns out that also works really, really well when you've got a lot of AI tools that need inputs that feed into it. But as a result, we don't have as much in the way of, I suppose, either personality conflicts or personality alignment as we had in the past.
And what hiring mistakes would you say that you've seen tech leaders make the most often, or maybe hiring mistakes that you've made?
I've made my fair share of hiring mistakes. I think for both myself and others, the biggest challenge I see is around not having a high enough bar in deciding to make that hire, because making a wrong hire becomes frustrating for the manager, frustrating for the person themselves, and delays you so long. So you really need to be confident that the person you're bringing on board is going to improve your team. You can't look at the person and say, okay, well, I want to give you a chance. I think you're just scraping by, but maybe we can make it work. Because maybe that's true, but more often than not, that's not going to give you the team you need to really succeed and deliver. You want to make sure that every person you're hiring is going to improve your team. So after 2, 3, 4, 5, 20 hires, your team is massively better than it is today, not just slightly better or incrementally or even drifting backwards.
Yeah, for sure. We had a guest recently who said, I asked him a similar question. What do you look for when hiring engineers? He goes, I actually don't look for the best engineers. I look for the engineers that I know aren't going to be a fit, and I make sure I don't hire them.
That's very true.
And that he's like, that's all you can really do. There's only so much you can learn, in the interview process. And I thought that was very, very interesting. And also the first time I definitely ever got that answer before. So sticking with teams, you've led teams as small as 5 people to over 100. How do you sort of adjust your org design at such vastly different scales, right?
Yeah, so a lot goes into constructing an org that can scale in terms of both people hierarchy and process. But largely, I think a lot of that isn't what matters the most. Of course, if you've got more people, there's a limit to how much you can do. You need some standardization in that process. But it's very easy to get hung up in trying to design the right process or design the right structure. I think what really makes the difference is if you've got 100 people, you want 100 people able to make decisions that move you forward. If you've got a team of 5, you can understand everything, you can engage with everyone, you can understand where things are going at a deep level and drive things forward. If you've got a team of 100, you can't. So if you try and make yourself a bottleneck, or you try and make decisions, you slow down the entire organization, leading to frustration and a lack of progress. So with a large team, the most important thing is to drive down the decisions as low as you can safely do so. So you want your ICs able to make decisions that will move things forward and solve problems and overcome solutions without those decisions having to flow upwards, except in exceptional circumstances. The more you can support, enable, and empower people, the more your organization's going to run.
Yeah, that definitely makes, especially if you're a really hands-on tech leader, it's kind of hard to manage a team of 100 people plus, because you're probably going to want to review everything. And if you're reviewing everything, that's going to slow things down pretty significantly, right? Yeah. You need to have that trust and autonomy in your team leads, and they need to have that trust and autonomy in their developers.
I so often see people that they'll go, okay, something's gone wrong. Maybe we released a bad change, maybe we broke it in production, and the knee-jerk reaction is, okay, we're going to have another approval step, or, okay, I have to personally see it this time before it goes ahead, rather than trying to understand, okay, well, where did we fail? How did I not convey the right knowledge or the training or the understanding to the right people so that they can do that?
Yeah, it's just taking ownership, right? And saying, all right, we made a mistake, not blaming someone else. I thought when you said your knee-jerk reaction would be, it's that person's fault, or it's this team's fault, because that I've seen, quite a bit back when I was an engineering leader, an engineer also, was just, well, that team or that person, and it's like, it doesn't matter. Like, even if it was that person's fault, like, structurally there's something wrong where that person was even able to make that mistake and for that to get committed to production, right?
Oh, totally. The only way you can really improve is if people feel safe telling you that it failed for these reasons so that you can make the right improvements. If people are if people are afraid to tell you honestly what happened, then you're in a really unhealthy spot.
And how do you sort of keep your org aligned with business priorities, especially when those priorities are shifting? Like in your case, you're buying companies. That means priorities can shift. New initiatives are probably coming along pretty often.
Yes, all the time. Keeping up with them is a constant struggle. For our org, we have quite a regular cadence, which helps. So every quarter, we figure out the teams, and they last for the entire quarter. We used to have an organizational design based around what we term an engineering factory. So Trilogy, about 5 years ago, was based around a model of large numbers of people focused on one particular function, huge process standardization, and delivering that way through economies of scale. And that kind of worked for us, and that it allowed us to scale massively. But it also had challenges in that people would become disconnected from what's real. So you'd have a lot of arguments over, okay, that unit didn't achieve my quality bar, so that team needs to fix it rather than that team, which was really unhealthy. These days, we understand that it's a lot smoother and healthier and better if you can get teams that own an end-to-end with more of a cross-functional split, so that they can see they're not just a cog focused on this bit, but they're delivering an outcome to a customer. And once you see that you're delivering an outcome to a customer, it becomes a lot more real what you're working towards. So we want to make sure that when we design the team structure, people are able to see end-to-end outcomes, and they're able to contribute in a way that's meaningful and valuable and real, so that we're optimizing for the right things.
Yeah, optimizing for outcomes, right? So talking about change and transformation, so you've been through a lot of transformations. What do you think, why do you think some of them stick and others fall flat?
So I've seen one of the challenges I've seen quite a lot is it's very easy for people to become overly attached to the process and lose sight of why you're doing something. For example, with agile transformations, you will see people that say, well, if I do these ceremonies and I do them in this way, then we're going to be amazing. But it's not the fact that you're doing a retrospective that's important. It's the fact that you're taking time to reflect on your successes and your mistakes so that you're going to not repeat those mistakes, and you're going to improve, and your team is going to learn from your learnings. And so I think it's important that you understand why things exist and how to apply them in the best way to your environment. So, it's important that you're going to continuously improve. It's important that you're going to do enough planning, that you're not going to waste effort. It's important that you have enough quality controls, that you're not going to make mistakes or produce low quality work. And often, whatever process you're choosing has some flavor of those managed in some way, but you need to understand why they exist and how they apply to your environment, and make sure you focus on the ones that are most valuable to you, that help cover your pain points and your challenges, so you can improve as quickly as possible and realize those benefits.
Yeah, it's funny your point on ceremony, right? Is a lot of engineers or just tech people in general, they're just so used to the formalities of the process that you can sort of lose the why along the way. And you're like, well, this is just what we do. This is what we've been doing. And it's like, okay, well, things are changing a little bit, so we're not going to do that every day anymore. And it's like, well, what do you mean? That's what we do. And it's like, all right, if we really need to get into this conversation, we can. But I think focusing on the why we do things, right? That's the most important part.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you're rolling out Agile and someone comes along and says, okay, guys, you've been working this way, but our team now, we're going to do a planning ceremony, we're going to do a retrospective, we're going to do backlog grooming. And everyone looks at this and goes, where's my day gone? Where am I going to do that work? Whereas if it's more of a discussion about, okay, well, you're one of the most experienced people in the team, and we see you've got these great learnings. How can we share those with the other people so everyone in our team is able to grow and improve and support you better? If we can understand the context and pitch it in a way that's relevant and meaningful to people, then you get better buy-in, but also you can do so in a way that's more effective and efficient and less wasteful.
And speaking of buy-in, what's your approach to getting buy-in when you need to change how your teams work?
So I think it's very important to understand the awareness and desire elements first. So it's quite easy to jump into this is how we're doing it. But first you need to understand, okay, what is the change we're doing? What is the benefit we're trying to deliver? And how does that apply to the person I'm talking to? Because often if you say, okay, well, we're going to operate in this way now, then that's sort of artificial and hard for a person to understand. But if you're saying, okay, well, we need to accelerate to achieve these outcomes that are financial or to better support our customers, or our customers ask for this particular thing, so we need to figure out how we can adapt to that. And then we understand the organizational driver first, so people understand, okay, well, I know why we're doing it. But secondly, what it means to me. How is this going to help me improve? And if you can understand around the drivers for that person or that role and help position it in a way that's relevant and meaningful to them, then you're going to get a lot better buy-in and have a much more successful change.
Yeah, it's figuring out sort of what motivates people, and that's going to be different usually person by person. I'm curious, sort of on the agile topic, how do you balance agility with governance and sort of operational stability? Because all of those things are sort of very vastly different.
Yes, they're all important, but in the right balance. It's very hard to, I think as an engineer at heart, I often want to push agility first. But I think we've all seen the situations or the fires that come with not having the right controls operationally. I like to have the right combination on teams. So I like to have people that are driving forward the delivery, but I also like people with operational expertise, so they're able to provide that perspective and that balance. So I think cross-functional teams are an important part of bringing different perspectives to a team to cover the different elements of the life cycle. I like to think of governance as something that should be light and not burden the teams, though. Just enough governance, because it's very easy to go heavy on the governance and slow everything down or not actually achieve the benefits you're setting out to achieve.
Yeah, for sure. Moving on to technology trends, which is obviously it's always been a topic, but I feel like it's become more and more of a topic every day for, I don't know, almost 3 years now. So we've been through cloud, SaaS, I'm probably skipping social media and mobile, then cloud, then SaaS, DevOps becoming a bigger part of eng orgs, and now AI reshaping the tech industry. Which shift have you seen be the most transformative for your team?
Undoubtedly, it has to be AI. When we saw virtualization or cloud, fundamentally the work was the same, but the hosting environment was different. And as you move into DevOps, you start adding automation, but there's a different skill set. The difference with AI is now all of the things we're doing that we were doing before, whether it's writing code, maintaining servers, spinning up infrastructure, all of those things have been touched at once. And no longer it's the case that, you need to adapt or add on just one skill to what you already had. You need to replace all of those things you were doing through an AI tool set so that you can accelerate them. So our company has adopted the approach of AI before anything else. And the idea there is before you tackle any task, you're expected to do it in an AI way of working. And that's important because even if the AI tooling isn't good at that particular task today, it helps you learn the right way of doing it so that you can start building up your context, you can start researching and identifying the right tools to solve that task so that you can start gaining the benefits and the advantages of that. And I fully see that almost all the different elements of the tech spectrum we're touching on are going to be transformed in one way or another by the introduction of AI.
Yeah, and with AI accelerating, how do you see that sort of impacting the role of an engineer?
So engineers very much, you think about 5 years ago, a lot of the focus of engineering was on producing code. These days, it's almost the opposite. You don't want your engineers writing code. So we see engineers more as orchestrators, people that take business requirements, translate those into the specific technical terms that the AI agents are going to understand and be able to deliver a high quality outcome with. And then they're wrapping the quality control around that. So they're making sure that it delivers the expected business outcomes. It's producing solutions that are simple, that are using the right technologies. And so through that process, engineers are the wrapper around the AI agents that are orchestrating the agents to deliver the right business outcomes. So a lot less emphasis on coding and a lot more emphasis on managing the agents to deliver the right outcomes.
Yeah, it's a huge shift, right? Because, 5 years ago plus, it was who's the best programmer on the team, who can, write the most quality code in a given sprint. There are leaderboards in engineering departments where it was like, all right, this person, how many tickets can you get done, which is essentially how much code are you writing or how
many lines of code.
Right. And now it's like the opposite. We had a previous guest who said, I'm not hiring software engineers anymore. I'm hiring product engineers, which is an interesting term, which is, to me, I'm not hiring people that can just write code. I'm hiring people who can figure out how to use code or how to use anything, any technology to solve a business problem and create a certain outcome. And that's a very different mindset than just a regular traditional software developer.
Oh, totally. And I think that's one of the skills that are becoming most important now. Whereas the emphasis was so much on the technology before, writing the code, producing the solution. But the truth is that's just a conduit. No one wants the code. No one wants you to produce an application. People want you what that enables. So understanding the business needs and being able to deliver a meaningful solution that solves a person's problem is really where it's at. And because there was so much effort and complexity in producing those solutions before, it was easy to get tied up in that. But as AI is eliminating those barriers and enabling much smaller teams or even individuals to deliver much more quickly and deliver a much broader swath of their solution space, then those creative skills, those product skills are really where it becomes essential, because the better understanding you can have of the solution space, then the better outcome you're going to get. And that's going to matter far more than your ability to create those solutions.
I'm curious, so if your thought, and you're not the only one for sure, is software developers shouldn't be writing code or shouldn't be writing code as much, what are your thoughts on AI generated code and what a software developer's role is in making sure that AI generated code is actually functional and reviewed and ready to push to production?
So my view is that this isn't a new challenge. We've always had diverse teams of people at different levels of skill. And the fact that it was a human writing it doesn't necessarily mean it's better quality than an AI writing it. So we've had review processes, we've had quality gates, we've had automated checkers, we've had automated test suites for a long time, and we just need to continue to apply those controls in a way that's applicable to AI. But it's even more beneficial now we're getting to AI agents, because if you're using AI agents as a substitute for a task for yourself, what I mean is I want to change that function, so I'm going to identify the function and tell it how to change it and what to change it to, then that's a very narrow and limited benefit. The best use of agents we see is more around achieving an outcome. So for example, I might start by saying, this is the test case that delivers the truth I want. I need this outcome to be achieved by the code, and this is the unit test or the functional test that is going to prove that it's working. And then I can set the AI agent running against that bar. And that means it's not going to run for 2 minutes now. It's going to run for half an hour and give me a much more fully formed solution. So by having those same quality gates we had in the past, but bringing them forward and allowing them to be acceptance criteria for AI agents, we can really leverage the potential of those agents and have more of them running more often and give us really great outcomes.
Yeah, and my only thought there would be, what are the guardrails that you give the AI agents, right? Because if you just give it the outcome, there's like a million different ways it could go about getting to that outcome, right? So you also kind of have to give it the guardrails of, we're using this framework or this technology and this stack. So use this so we have that technological continuity, but this is the outcome that ultimately is more important in what we're trying to achieve.
Oh, totally. And we see that IP of developers as being really the differentiating factor with them. So in the past, it was perhaps your skills, but in the future, it's going to be more an emphasis on what rules and guidance and context and second brain you've got that allows your agents to work better than someone else's agents.
So I'm curious, with all these changes that we just talked about, what traits do you think tomorrow's or even today's engineering leaders will need to have that are different than, say, 3 to 5 years ago?
So I think we talked about it a bit earlier, but creativity and product focus is going to be so much more important, because engineering in the past was all about tech and producing the solution. And now that's got easier, it's becoming more of a tool to achieve the outcome. So now we need to be far better at understanding the outcome and using the tool to deliver that, rather than having that isolated silo that people got trapped in.
Yeah, it's sort of like the rise of the technical product engineer, right? So it's like you kind of have to, everyone's starting to have to put on that product manager hat, no matter where you are in the organization. So a little bit about the future. If you had to place a bet, what do you think the next big wave for AI is that engineering leaders should prepare for?
The big one we're seeing now is the use of AI agents to scale people and outcomes, so being able to drive them autonomously. I think after that, we're probably going to see the next level of abstraction on top of that. So combination of agents being able to be leveraged as a service. At the moment, if you're wanting to deliver an outcome, you're pulling down the right agents, you're choosing how to apply them, you're applying your own context and getting the outcome. But what we'll see more and more, I think, of is preloaded context packs that are proven from experts. Can I buy your IP and your knowledge and use it locally? Can I take your combination of agents and use them in an out-of-the-box way in my environment? And I think the use of agents and the IP around them will become commoditized so that it's a lot easier for people to leverage them at scale.
So agentic AI, keep hearing about it. And I think your call is pretty spot on there. So we're going to wrap up the episode with some rapid fire questions, but feel free to take as long or as little as you want to answer them. So I love asking this one because I think of what I would do if I was in this situation. But if you could go back and give advice to yourself when you were a first-time manager, what would it be?
So focus on the people. Your job as a first-time manager is not about solving the tasks and the problems. Your job is to support your team and make them the best team they possibly can be. So share your knowledge as much as you can, support them, focus on growing them, and the better your team is, the better you're all going to be.
And for engineers today who are thinking about getting into engineering leadership, what's the one thing they should start doing?
So you want to make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. We see too many people that want to go into management for control or influence. That's not it. If you want to be a successful engineering leader, you need to make sure you're good at what you do and you are comfortable and happy engaging with people and sharing the knowledge. Because being a successful engineering leader is all about sharing those lessons with the team and helping grow them. So you need to be the best you possibly can be and really comfortable about engaging and sharing with others.
And last question, do you have a contrarian take on engineering leadership that maybe most engineering leaders don't share? This is my favorite question, by the way.
That's probably the most challenging one.
There might be a correlation between those two.
Yes, so one of the things I believe that's important is that engineering leaders are hands-on, because you cannot guide and support someone unless you understand how that works. You cannot provide meaningful coaching unless you have the knowledge to be able to provide someone coaching with. So you need to make sure that you understand how the work of the layer below you operates, and you need to be good enough at it that you can support and guide and coach them. We do see people that will step back and say, it's enough for me to delegate tasks or put the right person on it, but it's not. If that's all you're doing, you're adding no value. You need to understand the work and you need to be able to coach people to be a successful engineering leader.
Yeah, or else you're basically just a middle manager. I've spoken to some engineering leaders where I'm like, so do you code? I ask most of them this. I can guess what the answer is with you, which is, do you still code? And
yes,
have
absolutely.
you actually? Yeah, I knew it without even asking. But and also, do you code? But also, have you used all these tools like Cursor and Windsurf and things like that? And it's interesting. Like, I would say a vast majority say yes. But every once in a while, I'll come across someone who's like, oh, no, I haven't written code in years. And you're like, huh? Really? How are you an engineering leader and you're not up to the latest technology? Like, that seems difficult. But I guess for different organizations, maybe, there's someone else in that org that kind of fills that role. But Robert, congratulations. We are finished with your first podcast episode. Glad that it was on Tech Teams today. Thank you very much for the time. I personally love the conversation. For everyone in the audience, if you like this episode, please like it and subscribe to Tech Teams Today. Available on all your major podcast platforms, Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts. And have a great day. Thanks, Robert.
Thank you, Matt. It's been a pleasure.